Hello, good evening, everybody. Good day, everybody, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Ask Abhijit show. I hope you're all doing fantastic. You're all doing great. And before we get into the show, let me see who all is there on the live chat. I can see a lot of people. Air Defense Power, Alvin Rodriguez, Random Skull, Rishabh Dang, Feminist Slayer, Shamant Rao, Samartha Tripathi, Avinash Shravani, Deep Ankita, Shri Ramachandraya Namaha, Tirasha, J, Value Clips, Abhishek, Hela, Geopolitical, Dube from Indore. Tejas is back. Good to see you, Tejas. I hope you're doing well. Take care of yourself, my friend. God's servant, Vinit Savant, Shagun Chopra. Good to see you as well. Tanay Chandra, Shri Ramchandra Namaha. Again, Geopolitical Dube. Good to see you as well, sir. Krishna Govinda, Alfred Raghunath, Buldeo Rai from Suriname. Grimzobad, Pratham Agarwal, Manny Bo, Ocean, Oscar Madison, Supratim Datta, Megasthenis Ghosh, Sunil Segal, Bod Ningombam, Ritik Vishnoy, Solo Rider Akshay Rao. Who all do we have? The Ancient Speed, Vedant Sharma, Sachin H. Varun, Suryansh Kapil, Nikhil Kumar McLovin, hello, Sunil Mahala, Bharat Kumar, Kahan Bharwad, Richard Prexon, Jay Guman, Vishnu Mohanan, Gurukant Mukhe, Totan Chaudhary, Mayuri Krishna, Amisha Mishra, hello ma'am, Nova Bumblebee, Eisen, hello, Kapil Sachdeva, first off, Sachin Bijargi, Siddharth Suman, Shashank, Mr. Agnostic Human, Pratham Agarwal, Vinay Krishna, Manisha Cardozo, and lots and lots and lots of other people, the Conqueror, Samana Satish, and everybody else. Greetings to all of you, and thank you so much for being on this live stream. With that done, a lot of greetings. Let's get into the questions. I'm going to take questions from that you all have asked in the comments, and later, if possible, I'll take some from the live chat as well. Let's begin with the first question. What's the first question? Okay, this is from X, from Twitter. Sumero says, "Why is U.S. President Donald Trump, so interested? Why is he so interested in making Bitcoin and cryptocurrency uh, a part of the U.S. strategic reserve? So why is he creating an American strategic reserve, which includes which is dedicated to cryptocurrencies? Essentially, what's happening is that Trump is interested in making Bitcoin and various other cryptocurrencies into a strategic reserve asset for the United States. And why is this happening? That's the question. And he has recently signed an order to create a strategic Bitcoin or crypto reserve for the United States. So this move by Trump, it's part of his effort, his push to position his country, the United States, as the world's cryptocurrency capital. And he recently announced a crypto summit, that there's going to be a crypto summit. He announced that recently. And in this strategic reserve, there's going to be various cryptocurrencies that will be included, such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Cardano, and XRP, and various other cryptocurrencies. So this strategic reserve will hold cryptocurrencies that have been seized by the US government in legal proceedings, in court cases, in various legal proceedings. And this is going to be kind of like the strategic gold reserves that the United States has at Fort Knox. So is this a big deal? It's kind of a big deal because it's the first time the US government is treating Bitcoin and crypto as a valuable asset, similar to the way governments have historically treated gold. Every nation has gold assets, right? A certain amount of gold assets, few hundreds of tons of gold or thousands of tons of gold. You hold that in reserve because gold is the number one imperishable asset. So now the US is going to treat cryptocurrency and Bitcoin especially similar to the way we generally treat gold. And how much Bitcoin or crypto does the US government have? I think they estimated they have about 200,000, 2 lakh Bitcoins that they have seized thus far, which essentially is worth several billion dollars. I'm not sure exactly what it is. You can, if it's 200,000, you can figure out, you can calculate it based on the current going rate for one Bitcoin. And it's gonna be a few $1 billion. So instead of selling these bitcoins, they're gonna keep them as a long-term investment. And see, it's not a bad idea because it doesn't cost the US taxpayer anything. And if the value of Bitcoin goes up, and it could be really beneficial to the United States. So just to put this in the right context, what's Bitcoin? What's cryptocurrency? It's different from regular money because there, especially when it comes to Bitcoin, there's a limited amount of it. So it's a good way to protect against inflation. So that's why it's a good idea, and it shows that the U.S. and Trump are they're taking digital currencies seriously, and they want to make and keep America a leader. They want to keep America a leader in the global economy, and this would give the U.S. Various options, more options in dealing with other countries, especially in situations where regular banking may not work. Whether you want to fund some kind of regime change operation, or you want to fund so-called freedom fighters in various parts of the world, and so on. Okay, so that's a deal. Of course, this has some risks. Bitcoin's value can fluctuate. It can drop also, which has happened, I suppose, in the past. So that could be a problem. I'm sure everybody doesn't agree it's a good idea, but and I'm sure there are certain political arguments against this. But overall, I think the U.S. government is trying to be forward thinking, and staying in tune with the times. So that's the deal with Trump creating a Bitcoin and cryptocurrency strategic reserve for his country. Mr. 88ers says, why is Bir Tawil still unclaimed and uninhabited? Will this issue ever get resolved? Or will both Sudan, or are both Sudan and Egypt secretly preparing for war in the long run? Bir Tawil. Let's find out what Bir Tawil is. Where's the map? We need to go to the map, my friends. Where's the map? Here is map. Yes. So let's put the map on the screen, and now we're gonna take a look at where Bir Tawil is. So you all know where India is. Yes, we're gonna go westwards. We're gonna cross the Arabian Peninsula, and here we are at the border between Egypt and Sudan. As you can see, it's a straight line, and you can see dashed lines over here, right? So this big, roughly triangular-like region, that's a disputed territory. Okay, and this smaller region, which is now kind of in the middle of the screen, let's zoom in, zoom in, zoom in. This region is called Bir Tawil. And this other region, which is kind of triangular, is called the Halaib Triangle. So both nations, Egypt and Sudan, claim this territory, the Halaib Triangle. Egypt administers it, and neither nation wants Bir Tawil. And if you look at it from the satellite imagery perspective, you can see it's mostly barren land, um, desert, and there's no vegetation and nothing essentially. Okay, so that kind of gives us a clue, one of the clues as to why Bir Tawil is something neither nation wants. So the smaller territory in the dashed line is Bir Tawil. The larger one is the Halaib Triangle. So what's the deal now? So to give you a very brief introduction as to what's going on and why Bir Tawil nobody wants it, it remains unclaimed. It is unclaimed by both nations, and because it's a rather low value piece of territory, it's a very harsh desert region. There is no human inhabitation. It's terrible. It's not good for habitation. There's no human inhabitation, and it's extremely harsh. There are no strategic reasons why any nation would want it. There are no economic reasons why anybody would want it. There's no political reason. There are no political incentives for either nation to claim it. There's no water. There's no resources. There's no access to the ocean. There are no development opportunities. There's nothing. It's completely unsuitable for habitation. Now, let's put this back on the screen and understand the historical context as to how these things happen. These disputes and whatever else happens. As you can see, if we zoom out, if you look at the borders of various nations in Africa, you will see lots and lots of straight lines. Even in the West Asia region, you will see lots of straight lines. And if you look at Egypt's borders, it's just straight lines, more or less. Now, how did this happen? It's all the consequence of colonization. Okay, colonial powers they arbitrarily decide what the lines on the map are going to be, and that's the root cause of so many of the problems that plague and bedevil the African countries that exist today. So there was a historical border dispute between Egypt and Sudan, which is which originates in decisions made by the United Kingdom in the colonial era. So late 19th century, almost at the cusp of the 20th century, the British established this straight line boundary, which is, I think, called the 22nd parallel between Egypt and Sudan. And they placed this region of Bir Tawil, let's put that back on the screen. And the British put Bir Tawil in Sudan. Okay. Then a couple of years later, like 2-3 years later, the British drew an ad hoc administrative boundary based on apparently some land used by tribals or whatever. And they drew this boundary. In this boundary, they placed Bir Tawil under Egyptian administration because of some tribal land use or whatever. So they first made this straight line map, then they changed their mind and placed Bir Tawil under Egyptian administration, and so on. So that is the origin of this matter. But there's a parallel issue, which is the dispute over the Halaib Triangle. So this Halaib Triangle is way more valuable. Okay. And both nations claim this. And strangely, because of this claim, neither nation wants to claim Bir Tawil. So according to what we call international law, which essentially is the treaties, etc., that both nations are party to. So according to under the framework of international law, for whatever reason, I've not looked into the details, apparently there is no legal basis for either country to claim both territories simultaneously. And both nations want the Halaib Triangle. And nobody, therefore, wants to claim the useless Bir Tawil, which is why it remains unclaimed. Nobody goes there. Neither country has any framework, administration, governance over there. Completely barren, no resources. Okay, so it's one of the rare unclaimed territories in the world. So I'm not sure what the details of the international law thing are, which ensure that neither nation can claim both territories simultaneously. But if you want, you can look into it. So both nations want the Halaib Triangle. This has resources. This has water. This has access to the ocean, which is the Red Sea, and there is habitation as well over here. As you can see, there's habitation and so on. So that's the deal. It's one of the strange cases, one of the rare cases of a territory that is uninhabited and unclaimed by any nation. And I believe there have been attempts in the past by various people, just for fun, I suppose, to call it a micronation and so on. But and I suppose anybody can travel there to Bir Tawil, either through Sudan, if you are courageous enough to go there, or via Egypt. But I would not recommend going to Bir Tawil because there's no government there. And yeah, you may end up in trouble. So better not go there. So that's the deal with Bir Tawil. Pranay Paul says Trump hails the reclaiming of the Panama Canal after a BlackRock-led group acquires a stake. What's the significance of this in regional and global geopolitics? Does this further confirm that companies like BlackRock function as an arm of the deep state? Okay, so what's happened is that the US gigantic company called BlackRock has acquired the Panama Canal. Where's the Panama Canal? In case you want to see, let's put that on the screen. Where's the map? Here's the map. So it's in Central America. There's this nation called Panama, and there's this canal that goes through Panama City and so on. And it's an artificial canal that the Americans built and in the past, and it connects the two great oceans, the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. If this canal did not exist, like it did not in the past, then historically ships had to go all the way down south and cross the horrific, and they had to go around the horrific Cape Horn. And if you know anything about Cape Horn, it's a dreaded place, terrible weather. So many ships get wrecked over here. So it's not a good place to go to. So that's why, and it takes so much more time to round the entire continent, right? So the Panama Canal is an extremely important geopolitical strategic choke point, and BlackRock has acquired this. So the U.S. government did not need to send soldiers or the military or whatever there. BlackRock simply has acquired this, and now it's a U.S. possession. So obviously, it's very significant. It gives the US control over one of the most important geographic choke points in the world, one of the most strategic choke points in the world. And the US obviously will, over time, have a significant naval, etc., presence in the region, and so on. That will happen. So they essentially now own this strategic choke point. This definitely confirms that gigantic corporations like BlackRock essentially are extensions of the US government and whatever you want to call it, the deep state or whatever. Absolutely, no question about it. So yeah, it's a fait accompli. The Donald Trump was talking about acquiring the Panama Canal. They have acquired it. It doesn't matter how you acquire it, you got to acquire it. You don't need to see when you have a nation like the US that has so many options, they don't need to use the military for everything. They don't need to launch an invasion of Panama. They just acquire this, they just buy it through one of their proxies. So yeah, BlackRock certainly is an arm of the US establishment, the US government, of the United States as a geopolitical entity, and they have got this done. So what is next? Is it Mexico? Is it Canada? Is it Greenland? What is it? That's the question. Prakhar Gupta says, do you think Trump has gone mad after his recent statements about Canada, the Gulf of Mexico, and Greenland? Do these statements have any substance in them? Look, if we go to the map, which is this is Google Maps, right? If we go there, if you go to Google Maps and you go to the Gulf of Mexico, what do we find here? Gulf of Mexico into brackets Gulf of America. So Trump has already renamed this as the Gulf of America, and right now we are seeing a transition phase in Google Maps. It's still called Gulf of Mexico, but they're placing Gulf of America into brackets, and eventually they're gonna get rid of this Gulf of Mexico term, and it's simply gonna be called Gulf of America. So that's done. It's just a symbolic thing. I mean, the US is a way more powerful nation, so obviously they can name it as per their choice. Fine. So that is done. What about Canada? So Trump calls Justin Trudeau the governor of the great state of Canada, right? He doesn't call him the prime minister of Canada. And he calls Canada the great state of Canada, not the great nation of Canada. So the Americans have always essentially owned Canada, but it's technically a separate country. And if they want, they're going to get this done as well. They can simply integrate Canada into the United States as one of the territories, maybe the 51st state, or whichever way they want to do it. Maybe make it a territory similar to what Puerto Rico is. We'll see. They can do it anytime they want. They can do it the hard way, or they can do it very nicely. There's nothing the Canadian government or the people can do about this if the Americans decide to incorporate Canada into their nation. Now the question is Greenland. Greenland is this territory. It looks very large over here. It's not that large, but it's important. And Trump says that we need to acquire Greenland because it's important to our national security. So Greenland technically belongs to Denmark. What is Denmark? It's a small little country over here. It's one of the Scandinavian countries, one of the erstwhile Viking countries. And Greenland, for historical reasons, I will not go into them, it belongs to Denmark. Right. So how does Trump acquire Greenland? How does he get it done? What if Denmark refuses to sell Greenland to the US? So what you do is this. Look, Denmark is part of the EU. It's part of possibly NATO. It's a country that's essentially a puppet, a vassal of the US. We all know this. So it can be arm twisted through a variety of ways, and we'll not go into the ways because it's not nice to talk about those ways. There's nothing violent in here. It's all economic terms and various kinds of leverage you can apply to make a nation capitulate and agree to what you want. So The first stage is, how will Trump acquire Greenland? I think he's going to acquire it. Okay, so how will he do this is the question. Okay, let's look at it step by step. First step is apply various kinds of pressure on the government of Denmark, the people who are in the decision making capacity. Apply various kinds of leverage and pressure on these people. So after you do that, after some time, the government of Denmark, you will find, will agree to a referendum in Greenland. Does Greenland want to remain part of Denmark? Does it want to be independent, or does it want to become a part of the US? That's step number one. So first you apply pressure on the politicians, they capitulate, and they agree to a referendum. Then you set a date for the referendum, which is, let's say, 3 months, 6 months in the future. Now what you do, if you are Donald Trump, is you go to the people of Greenland. How many? What's the population of Greenland? Let's quickly take a look, shall we? What's the population of Greenland? Let's quickly take a look. Let's Google that. Hey Google, no, Greenland population. Greenland population is about 57,000. Okay, so what Trump does now is that once the date of the referendum is set, he makes a promise to the people of Greenland. I'm going to give each and every citizen or resident of Greenland $1 million if you vote to become a part of the US. So how much does it cost the US? First of all, it's 56,865, right? Okay, now calculator. So 56,865, 56. Let's just call it 57,000. Okay, you go give each of them $1 million. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How much is it? Let's divide this by 1 with 9 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It is $57 billion. That's all it costs the United States. That's all it will cost them. $57 billion, which is not a lot of money. It's peanuts. It's small change for the US. So imagine what $1 million can do to a person. If you're a family of, let's say, 3 people. Oh, in the West, you have small families, father, mother, and one child, let's say. And the child is, let's say, 5 years old. You get $3 million as a family. You're set for life if you have any sense, right? So all Trump has to do is to promise every single citizen or resident of Greenland $1 million if Greenland votes to become part of the US. Done deal. It's a done deal. Everybody will jump at the opportunity. Let's all vote and ensure we get $1 million each. That's how easy it is. And it's going to happen. So Greenland, in my opinion, is a done deal. Sooner or later, it's going to become a part of the United States. There we have it. Okay, what is next? Samarth says, why did Dr. S. Jaishankar say that Trump is good for India, especially in the context of a multipolar world? Recently, Trump announced reciprocal tariffs, particularly targeting India. And Jaishankar hinted that a trade deal could be possible, though this is just speculation. What does this mean for India-US relations? Okay, so why did Dr. Jaishankar say that Trump is good for India? First of all, please understand, whoever is the president of the United States, you have to see this. You have to say this person is great for us. The US is the most powerful nation in the world. Can a nation like India afford to say this guy is bad for us? Can we afford to say that? Does it make any logical sense to say something like that? You have to praise them. You have to flatter them. That's number one. That's the first point I would like to make. You never say they are bad, whoever the president is. Secondly, this is Donald Trump and not Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. Do you even remember what sort of attitude and approach they had towards India? The Biden-Harris administration, they were downright evil towards India. The Democrats hate India. They have a great amount of antipathy towards India historically. They are great supporters of Pakistan, and they it's the Democrats who have typically been the ones funding all kinds of anti-India activities within India. For example, rampant industrial scale demographic religious change, Christianization, funding of missionary organizations, all of that, all the human rights abuses and claims they make about India, backsliding of the backsliding, the entire media onslaught against India, hurting India through so many different ways, like the Cookie Land for Christ thing that's happening in Manipur. Who started this? It was Victoria Newland and her cronies who started this, right? The entire Myanmar civil war, which has spilled over into Manipur, the influx of lakhs of illegal infiltrators, cookies, foreigners into India, yes, all that, the Bangladesh coup, everything, support for Pakistan. The Democrats have historically been extraordinarily anti India. And Trump is not that sort of guy. Trump has no issue with India. Yeah. So Trump is actually good for India. And why not say that? Please understand that. It's nothing to do with the context of a unipolar, multipolar, or tripolar or bipolar world. It has nothing to do with that. Trump is actually good for India. Of course, he's going to announce reciprocal tariffs. He wants wins for his country. And he's not announced reciprocal tariffs only for us. He's announced reciprocal tariffs globally against every nation that has tariffs against, that imposes tariffs on things it imports from the US. So if you tax X number of items 20%, I'm going to tax all your items 20%, that sort of thing. So it's not aimed at India. He actually likes India. And he has a great amount of warmth towards Prime Minister Modi. Now, you think this tariffs issue is going to be a big deal? Absolutely not. It's not going to be a thorn in the India-US or US-India relationship. First of all, understand this. We tax American imports. Sure. We have tariffs of our own. How much? So when it comes to about 75% of the stuff we import from the US, 75% of the items, our tariffs are 5% or less. It's a nothing burger. It's non-issue. The other 25%, we can discuss it. We can talk about it. So when Trump says, I'm going to tax you, I'm going to impose reciprocal tariffs, we will say, sir, please, sir, what's the need? We are willing to do whatever you need, sir. We will give you the win that you want. You can go and tell the American people that I got the Indians to do the right thing. So please, sir, let's sit down on the negotiating table. We'll send our representatives. You send your representatives. We can sit down and we can work it out. There's no need to go to have a trade war. We don't want a trade war. We want friendship with the US. That's what the government of India is going to say. Take it in writing. We cannot have a trade war with the US. Trump will squash any nation that tries to have a trade war with him. We want to be on Trump's good side. So let's give him the wins that he wants. If you're taxing his American whiskeys too much, let's bring the taxes down. I believe it's already done. I hear that lots of whiskey aficionados are pretty overjoyed. American bourbon whiskey is much cheaper now. If Trump wants the tariffs on Harley Davidson motorcycles to come down, sure, let's do it. Doesn't matter. So my point is, it doesn't mean anything bad for India-US relations. I think during Trump's presidency, India-US relations will reach their peak, all-time greatest peak. How great? Mr. Trump and Mr. Modi dancing hand in hand. That good. That's what I think is going to happen. Is it a good thing for India? We'll see. But yeah. Okay, next. Ogi and Crack says, compare US military to Russian one. I know you won't admit it, but the US military is 10 times stronger than Russian military. Okay. So this person believes that I'm biased in some way. I'm biased. Oh, absolutely. I'm biased towards India. But I don't deny the facts, whatever the facts are. So let's find out what the facts are. Let's compare the US military to the Russian one. So first of all, let's Google top air forces. Top air forces, okay? Let's put that on the screen. Top air forces. So let's go to the World Directory of Modern Military Aircraft, WDMMA, whatever it is. Global Air Powers Ranking 2025. What is the thing like? Okay, the top 10. Number 1 is the US Air Force, 5,004 units. Number 2 is the US Navy, 2,500 units. Number 3 is the Russian Air Force, 3,600 something units. Number 4 is the US Army. Number 5 is the US Marines. Good God. And they're ranking India as number 6 and China as number 7. I am not sure why, but whatever. I'm not looking into that. Let's look at the top row. This is also interesting, but let's look at the top row. Russia is number 3, and the other top four are US military divisions. So you can see that if you add these numbers up, 5,000 plus 2,500, 7,500 plus 11,000, almost 12,000, almost 13,000 units the Americans have, and the Russians have 3,600. The Russians can't match, they don't stand a chance against the US Air Force, clearly. Okay, that's number 1. Let's see military spending by country. Let us see military spending by country. That's a good indicator of how powerful a nation is. Military spending by country. Let's go to Statista. Countries with the highest military spending in the world 2023. US $916 billion, nearly $1 trillion. China 296 billion. Russia 109 and India 83.6. The top 4. Okay. France doesn't even figure anywhere nearby. So once again, the US military spending is about roughly almost 9 times that of Russia. Almost 9 times. Definitely over 8 times. Okay. So there again, clearly the US is more powerful, way more powerful. Now let's see nuclear weapons, nuclear weapon strength. Let's do this. So we go to ICANN for this. What do we have? There are total 12,512 allegedly warheads in the world. Russia has 5,889 warheads. The US has 5,224. China 410, and so on and so forth. So on and so forth. Okay. So in this matter, Russia is slightly ahead of the US. But if you look at everything else, the US is way, way, way ahead of Russia. Right? So how do we compare these two nations? So look, we have to do a hard power comparison. Hard power is not just military strength. It's also economic strength. It's also various other factors. Okay, I'll not go into all of that. But if you do a basic hard power comparison, which includes the area, land area of a nation, the population of a nation, the kind of resources the nation has, the economic, the GDP of the nation, the military expenditure of the nation, the nuclear warhead, number of nuclear warheads, you do all of that, how sovereign the nation is, how energy independent or not it is, and various other factors. You put all of that together into a formula that makes sense, then you will find that you can calculate the hard power score of a nation as a number. And if you do that, you will see that the US has about twice the hard power of Russia. And the US military strength probably is around 10 times that of Russia. So if the US military strength is 10 times that of Russia and the US has way more power position than Russia, then why is the hard power only twice that of Russia? For that, you have to understand how hard power is calculated. But the most important factor is this: the US cannot even dare start a war against Russia for simply one factor. A war with Russia will mean the end of the world and the complete annihilation of the US and Russia also, because of the nuclear might that Russia has. And Russia has the best delivery systems, rockets, ICBMs. So there's no question of starting a war with Russia, even though the US military may be 10 times more powerful. They still don't dare fight Russia. And so it's like that, you see. So you have to look at the world through a nuanced perspective. The US may have 10 times the military might as Russia, but the Russians have the most devastating nuclear arsenal in the world. And the Americans cannot dare fight Russia because of this. And there are other factors as well. So look at the world from not a black and white 1 or 0 perspective, but from a more nuanced perspective, Ogie and crack. I would recommend doing that. You will learn a lot more than trying to taunt somebody and making fun. Learn something. Okay, Pranay Paul and Samarth ask this question. Rubio, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, has openly admitted that the Ukraine war is a US-Russia proxy conflict, and this isn't surprising. It's exactly what I have been saying since February 24, 2022. But why are they being so blatant and open about this now? Has the US ever made such admissions before? What's the bigger game at play? Sabat says Marco Rubio recently stated that the Ukraine conflict is a proxy war between two nuclear powers, with the US aiding Ukraine against Russia. At the same time, the era of US unipolar dominance seems to be shifting, with Donald Trump's policies accelerating the emergence of a multipolar world. What would the US benefit from this transition? And if multipolarity fully takes shape, how can the US ensure it's not dethroned from its position as the world's leading superpower, or only superpower, sole superpower? So yes, it's rather unusual that the US Secretary of State admits that they have been engaged in a proxy war against Russia. The Ukraine is nothing but a proxy war. It's apparently it's fashionable to say this now. I have been saying this for the past 3 years when it was not fashionable to say that. It's a proxy war. So yes, what I have been saying has been confirmed by the US Secretary of State. So why are they being open about this now? It's because they want to end the war. The Trump administration wants to end the war immediately. They don't want to waste any more American resources, money, manpower, material, whatever. Not manpower, but material, etc. in the war. It's a waste of it's a drain on their resources. So they want to end it immediately. So they're going to put the blame on the previous administration, the Biden-Harris administration. Trump has been saying this war would have never happened if I was president, and probably is right. So he's putting the blame on the previous administration, and he's saying that they had engaged the US in a proxy war against Russia, and Ukraine has been destroyed as a result, and we want to end this war. So that's why they are saying it openly now. I'm not sure if they've made such admissions before, but yeah, the bigger game is that the US wants to focus on other things, especially China and so on. And they want to focus on Europe as well in a different way. So that's the answer to Pranay Paul's question. Now, is the era of US unipolar dominance shifting? Is it ending? I don't think it's ending. It's the sole superpower. But Trump's policies are indeed accelerating the very rapid geopolitical change in the world. Is it a unipolar world? I'm not sure about that. What would a unipolar world look like? Ask yourselves, my friends, what would a unipolar world look like? In my opinion, a unipolar world is about 20, 30 nations with nuclear powers. That's a multipolar world. Ask yourself the question, what would a multipolar world look like? In my opinion, a multipolar world would have 20, 30 nations with nuclear powers, with nuclear weapons. We don't want that. Anyway, what does the US benefit from this transition is the question, right? See, by ending the war, this huge drain on the US economy ends. And it also brings Russia eventually back into the Western economy by ending some of the sanctions and so on. It also ends Russia's very close dependence on China. It gives Russia more options. And so that's the deal with Russia and China. Now, why is Trump making statements about leaving NATO, etc., and putting a lot of blame on the EU nations for not paying enough money for the upkeep of NATO and all that? Trump wants to put the European nations in their place, and he wants to extract more money out of them for NATO, and he's going to get it done. See, in the 20th century, the European powers were treated like royalty, even though they were no longer world powers at all. But the US had a policy of treating them like royalty, treating them like they are equals, and managing them in that manner. Trump doesn't believe in any of that. Trump is like an elephant in a library. It's like a wildfire raging through a library. He's as restrained as that. He's not going to give anybody any of that unnecessary respect and all that. Everybody needs to get in line, and it's going to be a very transactional world. And he's going to get Europe to do what he wants. Right now, the European nations, the EU leaders, the bureaucrats are all ganging up against the US, and they're claiming that they will support Zelenskyy. They don't have the resources to support Zelenskyy. They don't have the money or the weapons or the ammunition or whatever to support Zelenskyy and keep the Ukraine war going. So they're going to find out very soon what the world really is like, and they are insignificant. These nations are insignificant. What can Lithuania give to Ukraine? What can Luxembourg give to Ukraine? What can the UK give to Ukraine? Maybe £1 billion, £2 billion, and then what? After that, what? Um, so Trump is gonna show the European nations where they actually belong in the world order, much lower than other nations like India, actually. Geopolitically, the European nations, EU nations, and NATO nations are insignificant without US backing. They are not even in the same league as a smaller power like India. So Trump is going to do that, and he's going to keep the European nations under a tight leash eventually. They're going to remain in NATO. They're going to do whatever the Americans tell them. Maybe the Americans leave NATO or leave or whatever. They're going to still control the European nations. So that's the kind of world we're going to see in the next 3-4 years. A lot of change is going to happen. What the US benefits is they get more direct control over the assets they own. What are the assets they own? They own the EU, they own NATO, they own a lot of Africa. We're not looking even there, even, right? They own South Korea, they own Japan, they own Taiwan, they own Pakistan and East and West Pakistan, and a lot more. So they're going to have much more direct control over everything for the upcoming rivalry with China. See, they are afraid of Russia because of Russia's incredible nuclear might. But beyond that, Russia isn't that strong. But when it comes to China, China is a genuine rival to the US technologically. China's military might is untested. The last war they fought was in 1979 and they lost the war. But this is a whole different China. They're the world's largest navy, and they are the only nation that is in competition with the US in various technologies, including AI. So that is what the US really needs to focus on containing China and denying China the opportunity to grow. So for that to happen, you need to take much stronger control over all the resources you own. So that's what is happening right now. The US is and the US is doing all this to ensure it's not dethroned from its position as the world's superpower. So it's a work in progress. We're going to keep an eye on this, and that's the direction in which the world is going. Okay, Pranay says, with Trump openly criticizing Zelensky and Europe acknowledging its dependence on the US, is Western support for Ukraine starting to wane? Not now, even Elon Musk suggests offering Zelensky amnesty for a peaceful transition. Is Ukraine being set up for a geopolitical reset? What does it mean for Zelensky's fate? And what could be Ukraine's future after numerous European leaders publicly hosted and voiced support for Zelensky? Has anything changed on the ground since that spat at the White House last week? So last week we had Zelensky's visit to the White House, in which he behaved extremely ungraciously. He went there as a supplicant, as a beggar, but he's so full of himself because of the way the media has lionized him and the European leaders have lionized him that he did not realize. He thought that he could do the same thing in the US. And Trump is a different kind of person, so did not work with Trump. And Zelensky, I believe, he deserved the treatment he got. Now, the deal is that he left the White House, he left the US, he went back to Europe, and now various EU leaders hosted him and once again lionized him. King Charles of England hosted him and gave him a lot of honor. And all the EU bureaucrats, leaders, so-called leaders, they tweeted the same message in support of Ukraine and Zelensky, essentially Zelensky, and we support Zelensky, that sort of thing. And they're all saying, and Monsieur Macron of France is saying that the Ukraine war cannot end. It cannot end with Russia keeping the territories it has conquered, and we're going to support Ukraine and so on. The question is, does the EU collectively have sufficient resources to keep the Ukraine war going? Essentially, you have two options, right? If you cannot just keep the war going and keep people dying and bleeding. You either end the war or you pour enough resources into the Ukrainian military that can defeat Russia. You can't just keep it going month after month, year after year. Does it make any sense? It's madness. Who's dying? Ukrainians are dying. And Russians. But they don't care about the Russians, so let's talk about the Ukrainians. Ukrainians are dying every day fighting the Russians. So either put enough resources into the military might of Ukraine that can defeat Russia, or end the goddamned war. Don't just keep it going forever. It's destroying Ukraine. Does it make any sense what I'm saying to you? So these European leaders, they don't like Trump. They don't like the way Trump deals with them, because he doesn't respect them. He doesn't give them any respect. He doesn't show them any respect. He's treating them the way he would treat an African leader, because from a hard power perspective, that's where they are. They are not, the EU nations are not sovereign nations. They have no military might. Then they have small economies in recession, and these are insignificant nations. And Trump sees it that way only. That's why these people don't like him. So what's going to happen now? What's going to happen is that the EU leaders will have discovered by now that they cannot keep the war going on, and Trump has now put a freeze to the US supply of money and everything else to Ukraine. So no more US aid. Let's see how long the EU can keep this going. Maybe a month or two at most, and then they will also stop, because they cannot, you know, they don't have war economies. They don't have these big factories that produce on a continuous basis huge amounts of arms and ammunition. They don't have any of that. They don't even have sufficient money to keep their people warm sometimes during winter. So what happens now is the question. That's the question. They can keep lionizing Zelenskyy, etc. What's going to happen now is, in a month or two, everybody is going to calm down and confront reality. Okay, that's what will happen. And then Zelensky's fate will be decided. Probably he will be moved to some European nation, maybe to Paris. Maybe Zelensky can move to Paris. He is not going to be welcome in the US anymore. But I think he will be allowed to make a reasonably dignified exit out of Ukraine. He will probably go to Paris or some other place, somewhere in the EU. Maybe he can set up home with Kaya Kalas or whoever, There's people who support him so much. So he's going to go to some European nation, and somebody else will be placed in the position of interim president of Ukraine, and they will sign this deal with Trump, the minerals deal. The US gets access to all ownership of all the minerals of Ukraine, the mineral wealth, and then the US and Russia, Trump and Putin, will meet, and they will work out the framework of the ceasefire, and then the Ukraine war will end. That's what's going to happen. Europe is going to be shown its place by Trump, not by Putin, by Trump. So by doing this, the war ends. Trump can tell his population, his constituency, his voters that, see, I ended the war. I ended this wasteful war. We were wasting so much US taxpayer money. It's over. He's gonna put Europe in its place. If needed, they can do regime changes in various nations in Europe. They can do it, the Americans. And by the time the 4 years of Trump are out, they're going to have complete hard control over Europe. So that's what is going to happen. I'm actually making predictions here, and let's see. Come back here in 4 years, and let's see how this turns out. Aha. Okay. Boruto Chiha. Boruto Uchiha says, what do you think about the situation of Bangladesh and Cookie Land, so-called Cookie Land? As many terrorist groups have captured massive amounts of land in Bangladesh and Myanmar and are now wanting to join India, and they're also giving us the complete access of the lands. Do you think we should accept it? And there's more questions about the same thing. Geopolitical Dubey says, is Zoland, by grabbing Myanmar's land, really within Bharat? How do you see the current situation of Myanmar? Namrata says, please give your opinion on the India-Myanmar merger. Is it good or bad for India? Sunil says, one Mizo MP asked Chin rebels to join India. Will we annex some territory if this happens? Pranay says, what's your take on the Mizoram MP's visit to a rebel outfit in Myanmar, urging them to join the Indian Union, with Myanmar rebel units merging in Mizoram and the Home Ministry ensuring free movement in Manipur? Could this indicate a shift towards long-term stability in the Northeast and broader whatever? How significant is this in India's broader geopolitical and internal security strategy? Okay. A lot of questions about, and there are more. I was able to just take 3, 4, 5 of these questions. So apparently some news has come out. Okay. Let's put the news on the screen, shall we? Mizoram MPs visiting rebel outfits in Burma and all. Let's put this on the screen. There are multiple pieces of news that are coming out. Let's see. This is from the Hindu. Mizoram MP visits rebel outfit in Myanmar, asks them to join the Indian Union. Mizo National Front MP crosses to Myanmar on foot, meets Chinland Council to forge friendship and brotherhood, saying that they belong to the same Mizo family, and will brief Home Ministry, External Affairs ministers on the talks. And there's some picture of this. Uh, and this MP has visited this camp and offices of this insurgent group, which controls parts of northwest Myanmar in areas bordering India. He says he has invited them to join the Union of India. And there is no official government in Myanmar, because there is a shared tribal bond on both sides of the border, which is the Kuki bond, the Zo people bond, right? So that's the kind of news that's coming out. Now, first of all, I don't trust these news outlets that report all of this. I don't trust these reporters, first of all. I don't know what the truth is on the ground in Myanmar. Okay? And if some MP, member of parliament, who is a Mizo person, Zomi person, crosses over into the neighboring country and tells an insurgent outfit or whatever you want to call them that you need to join the Union of India because we are the same ethnicity. Ask yourself this question. On what basis is he inviting them to join India? On the basis of common culture and civilization with India, or on the basis of the same Kuki ethnicity, Kuki Mizo ethnicity? Right? Now, we know that there is this entire project that the Biden administration started, Kuki Land for Christ. Right? They have been funding this. And these people have been terrorizing Indians in Manipur, doing all kinds of horrific atrocities. Do we want such people to become Indians? Don't we have enough lakhs of illegal infiltrators, foreigner cookies, squatting on over half of Manipur? Do we want even more? Just because we'll get some few square kilometers of territory. I am okay with territory. Manipur's Kabo Valley is Indian. I don't know. It has never technically officially become Burmese. We can take that back. The question is, look, if you want to take parts of Burma, the question is, that is fine. But you have to remember that Burma as a large entity, as an overall entity, is a Buddhist, Hindu-Buddhist nation. Right? And these cookies who are fighting the Burmese government, they don't have allegiance to Burma. So it's almost like stealing your neighbor's territory because anti-nationals are occupying the territory. In the long run, do you think the people of Burma will like what we do if this happens? Just for a little bit of territory? I would be happy if the people of Burma decide voluntarily to reunite with India after a national referendum or something. That's the right way to do it. Nibbling away at little pieces of territory is behaving like China has been behaving in the past against India. Because there is a civil war in your country and your government is no longer able to exercise control on some territories, will steal them now. Because the anti-nationals of Burma have the same ethnicity as the cookies who are occupying Manipur. Do you think it's the right thing to do? Do you think it's a viable strategy long term? Do these people have any civilizational or cultural connect with India? No, they sometimes claim they are Christians. They sometimes claim they are Jews, and they're killing Hindus in Manipur. Do you want such people to become part of it? Don't we have enough of those already, illegally occupying more than half of Manipur? And who authorized this Mizo MP to cross over illegally into another country, into the neighboring country, and ask the so-called rebels or whatever to join India? Who authorized him to do this? So I think India needs to be really careful in this matter. Okay? This Cookie Land for Christ project has been bleeding Indians since May 2023. These people who are fighting India, trying to create an artificial Christian nation out of parts of India, Burma, and Bangladesh. And Sheikh Hasina spoke about this while she was still in power. Okay, do you think you can trust them? They are on the payroll of a foreign country. They are on the payroll of the enemies, the civilizational enemies of India. Okay, do you want more of them in India? So these people are anti-nationalists not just for India but also for Burma. They don't even have allegiance to Burma. They're fighting the Burmese government. I would say that we need to be really careful about this. Indians are overjoyed when we think of India gaining some territory. If we want to gain territory, we have to gain it where it really matters, which is POK, Gilgit Baltistan, Aksai Chin, and so on. Those are the territories we have lost in wars. But if we steal Burmese territory in this underhanded manner, we are not different from China or Pakistan. So if India wants Burmese territory, it has to be done properly. End the civil war in Burma whenever that happens. Let there be a proper government that administers the whole of Burma. Then let there be a referendum in Burma. And if they choose to reunite with India, I'll be the happiest person in the world. But this is not the way to do it. To join hands join hands with the anti-nationals of Burma who are also fighting and killing Indians. I hope the government of India is not involved in this entire matter. I hope this MP is acting on his own. But I would really urge a great amount of caution. And we Indians need to be very cautious about whom we support. Just because there is the prospect that maybe India may get some territory, a few square kilometers here and there. Please look at the big picture. Look at the world from a long-term perspective. We don't want these people in India. We have enough of them already. We have more than 100,000. Sorry, we have more than 100 million illegals in India squatting on our land, all across the country. Bangladeshis, Rohingyas, cookies, God knows what else. Do we need more of these people who hold guns in their hands and shoot at civilians? Do we want more of these people? So yeah, that's the way I see it. Surya says, if the UK attempts to obstruct the peace deal by sending its forces to Ukraine, will the US likely ignite the Scottish and Irish independence movements? So yeah, the UK is saying that Starmer, that guy Keir Starmer, the current temporary prime minister of the UK, he met with Zelenskyy right after Zelenskyy left the US and right after his disastrous meeting with Trump, and he met Zelenskyy and received him very warmly and said that the UK will support the Zelenskyy regime and ensure the war continues. So let's say Keir Starmer puts his money where his mouth is and sends money to Ukraine, and let's say even sends soldiers to Ukraine. What happens then? The Russians will annihilate those soldiers. They will launch airstrikes and missile strikes and wipe out those soldiers before they can even, change their clothes. The Russians will do that. But the bigger problem is if the British government goes against the US in this manner, then Trump, what can Trump do? Will the Trump regime reignite these independence movements? It sounds far-fetched, but understand the historical context. Forget the Scottish independence movement. When it comes to the Irish independence movement, for the most part, for the majority of the 20th century, there was this long drawn out and pretty intense Irish independence struggle against the British occupiers of Ireland. And in the UK, it's called the Troubles. And you had Irish resistance fighting British soldiers on the streets of Ireland. And the British soldiers committed all kinds of atrocities and massacres against the Irish. So the Irish hate the British. And this insurgency went on for decades and decades. And in the 80s, they almost took out Margaret Thatcher. They launched a mortar shell at the hotel room where she was staying, and she just happened to be in a different room at the time. That's why she survived. So this went on for a very long time. Okay. Now, Margaret Thatcher was a very independent lady. You can say whatever you want about her policies, but as long as she was the prime minister of the UK was a sovereign nation. It may have been no longer a first-rate world power, but it was sovereign. It did not toe the American line. Okay, the moment, so after she stepped down, or after she ended her political career, the next prime minister was John Major. And under John Major also, the UK was reasonably a sovereign nation. After John Major, you have the advent of Mr. Tony Blair as prime minister of the UK. And it is at that point in time, with the prime ministership of Tony Blair, that the UK becomes a US lapdog. The UK was no longer sovereign from that moment on. So people have called Mr. Tony Blair an American poodle. Okay, not a very nice thing to say, but it is what it is. And once Tony Blair comes to power, lo and behold, the Irish insurgency ends. Yeah, just like that, like magic. The moment you have a prime minister in office who turns his country into a US vassal, immediately the Irish insurgency ended. So you can, I suppose, put two and two together, right? You can. So yeah. So if Keir Starmer goes against US interests, what could the Americans do? Will they reignite the Irish insurgency, the freedom struggle, and maybe the Scottish freedom struggle? William Wallace, freedom, give me freedom or give me death, all that stuff? No. They don't need to do that. They don't need to take such drastic measures. All they need to do, the Americans, is a regime change. Get rid of Starmer. You know, there's a political coup in the political party, and his MPs no longer have confidence in him, and they withdraw support, and some new leader, some new puppet leader comes up. That's all that needs to be done. You don't need to to reignite an independence movement if the UK is not behaving. Just get rid of that prime minister. Okay, give him a slap on the wrist, put him back into the back benches of the parliament, and have a new puppet leader in his place. That's all the US needs to do. So yeah, Starmer is acting up right now, but it won't last long. Okay, Vikramaditya Rathore says there was a security breach in Dr. Jaishankar's security. God forbid if anything. So it's an incident that happened in the UK. Dr. Jaishankar was in the UK, and this security breach happened when he was leaving some place after an official event. So if anything dangerous happened, what would be the repercussions? It's time India takes security of not just ministers but high-ranking officials, but normal citizens as well, and teach the radical elements and those supporting them a lesson. What are my views? Samat says, with the UK pushing for a free trade agreement with India since 2022, how will the recent Khalistani attack on Indian External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and ongoing security lapses impact the FTA negotiations? Despite urgently needing the deal, UK police stood idle until a man stepped in front of Dr. Jaishankar's car holding the Indian flag, forcing action. Given past incidents like the April 2023 attack on the Indian High Commission and various riots against Hindus and Indian origin people in the UK, could these escalating tensions further delay or jeopardize the FTA? Okay, yeah. So this thing happened, and Dr. Jaishankar's convoy was kind of attacked, and this was a very, very serious and significant security lapse, security breach, and the UK police just stood and let this happen. So I don't know what the conversation was that Dr. Jaishankar had with whoever. Did it go well? Did it not go well? Maybe the UK is being very demanding, and Dr. Jaishankar and his team were probably not giving in to their demands, perhaps. I mean, we are a superior country, bigger, more powerful country, more important country. You don't get to make demands to us. We need yeah, sure, let's have a free trade agreement, but it has to be equitable, and it has to be a win-win situation, and it has to be good for both sides, mutually beneficial. You can't get away with your demands. We're not going to give in. So maybe that sort of thing may have happened. I'm just guessing. I wasn't there. Okay. And maybe the UK, and look, the UK has always had this attitude towards India that we were your colonizers, we were your occupiers, we destroyed your civilization, and we are a superior nation, you are a defeated nation, and we are a superior race, all that nonsense, right? They always have had this attitude, whether it's the UK government or UK politicians or even common people in the UK. Not all, but many of them have this attitude even today, that they are superior to us. And in the West, the Anglosphere, the Five Eyes nations, the UK, the US, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, we know that they have been harboring anti-India terrorists on their soil. There's plenty of anti-India terrorists and known terrorists and criminals who live in the UK and Canada. The killers of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, I believe some of them live in the UK. I mean, assassins, right? So that's the kind of nation it is. And the Americans also, they're harboring Gur Patwant Singh Pannu, or some such clown, Khalistani terrorist. The Canadians harbor lots of Khalistani elements. So these five nations, the Five Eyes nations, they harbor lots of anti-India forces, and they deploy them whenever required, whenever they want to send a message to India. And there's been past such actions in Canada, attacks on Indian properties, Indian government properties, calls for assassinating Indian officials, celebrating the assassination of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. And in the UK, there have been riots against against Indian origin people, especially against Hindus, attack on the Indian High Commission. So all these incidents are not isolated; they are all coordinated. Okay. So my point is, yeah, sure, I'm okay with a free trade agreement, as long as it is beneficial to India. I don't care about whether it's beneficial to the UK or not. It should be beneficial to India. India is more important than the UK. India is a more important nation than the UK. So from my perspective, if they are behaving like this, then they need to be sent a message. They need to be taught a lesson. And the government of India should take appropriate measures to respond to this. This cannot keep on happening. But yeah, it's serious, and these people need to be put in their place. Okay, Samarth. Okay, lots of questions from Samarth today. Donald Trump recently questioned the US-Japan alliance, sparking speculation about its potential collapse. If this were to happen, though just in the realm of speculation, how might it impact Japan's strategic position? After Japan's failed Asian NATO bid with India in 2024, it shifted to aiding India's Vision 2047 economically. What could be the implications for India's security and economy, and how might China react? Especially, as you previously mentioned, Japan could very easily and quickly develop nuclear weapons. Okay, so let's look at the background behind this matter, and it all goes down to what Trump has been saying. He's not happy with Japanese. He's dissatisfied with how things are with Japan. So let's put that on the screen quickly. What the background is, what the context is. So this is a tweet by a Japanese person. Trump voices dissatisfaction with the Japan-US alliance, says that the US is obligated to protect Japan, but Japan has no obligation to protect the US under any circumstances. And this is obviously not a satisfactory arrangement, according to President Donald Trump of the US. So look, let me just point out respectfully to Shri Donald Trump ji, that the US is obligated to protect Japan because the US militarily occupies Japan. And the US doesn't have more than 120 military bases permanently on Japanese soil to protect Japan. It has this for its own purposes and its own benefit. It militarily occupies Japan. And therefore, it is obligated to protect Japan as the occupying power. But of course, Donald Trump wants to have a win everywhere. He needs to have a better deal everywhere. So he is voicing dissatisfaction with the Japan-US alliance and says that Japan also needs to protect the US in some way. So that brings me back to what Henry Kissinger had predicted the year he died, just a few months before he died. And it was this. So Kissinger, one of the greatest diplomats, not the nicest persons, but one of the greatest and most important diplomats in the world, he said in 2023, just a few months before he died, that Japan is heading towards becoming a nuclear power in 5 years. Okay. He made that prediction, and you have to take Kissinger seriously. You may not like him, but you have to take him seriously. So if you see what he predicted in the light of what Donald Trump is saying, you have to ask yourself, how in the world can a nation like Japan, that is under US military occupation since 1945, how can such a nation protect the US? And from my perspective, one of the simplest, straightforward ways is for Japan to become a nuclear power. And Japan can have nuclear weapons next week if they want to. That's how technologically advanced they are. It's just that they're not allowed to. So all Trump has to do is allow them to acquire nukes, and by by the end of the year, they may have an arsenal of 20, 30, 40, 50 warheads. They may have it. And that way they could protect the US by being a much stronger line of defense against China. So do you think, my friends, my viewers, do you think that Japan could have nukes, could become a nuclear power in the next couple of years? Let me know what you think. I think Kissinger's prediction may be on the Japan may be on the path to making his prediction come true. It's possible. Bill Williams says, can US new posturing towards the Russian Federation, it cannot be deciphered as an attempt to remove all close relationships of China in order to isolate China. In the event of a hot war between the US and China in the current geopolitical world, or Taiwan, for example, will Russia stay neutral or just passively pass some sanctions or completely side with the US if the US does promise a lot of ease of restrictions on Russia? Good question. So everything that's happening is in preparation for the showdown between the US and China. The US sees China as the major long-term technological rival. Russia is a very powerful nation that the US fears only for the nuclear arsenal that the Russians have. But as we know, President Putin has always sought better relations with the US. Mr. Putin, in his early years as president, even naively thought that Russia should become a part of NATO. So Putin was always wanted peace with the West, with the US. So if you give him that, he's going to be happy. Of course, now he's a much older and much wiser man, and he sees the world the way it really is now. Okay. So let's say the Ukraine war ends and the US and Russia, they strike a good deal, which is beneficial for both sides. And the US drops a lot of sanctions that they are currently currently imposed on Russia, and they integrate Russia into the Western economy, enable SWIFT again, and so on. What does it mean? It means a lot of pressure goes off Russia, and Russia becomes a much happier nation overall. And Russia's very strong dependence on China also eases up a lot. So that's obviously good for Russia. Now let's say once this happens, the Americans impose sanctions on China and start a trade war, even further trade war with China. And let's say then there is a war or Taiwan or whatsoever. What happens now? So what should Russia do? From a Russian perspective, not from my perspective, not from your perspective, from a Russian perspective, what is in Russia's best interests? So let's say hypothetically, Russia stays away, doesn't participate, doesn't do anything in the war, and the US and Russia and China go to war. Russia stays out of it, and the US defeats China. Then what happens? Then Russia is totally isolated. So it's not good for Russia if China is destroyed or defeated by the Americans. Russia needs a multipolar world with China and India playing their own roles in this. So it's not good for Russia if China is defeated by the US. Then the US can completely focus on the destruction of Russia. So it doesn't make sense from a Russian perspective to stay neutral and passive if there's a war between the US and China. I believe Russia will support China if there is a hot war between the US and China. And Russia will act as the security guarantor of China from a nuclear perspective. That's how I see things happening. And obviously the Americans and Chinese will not go to war. It's stupid to go to war. But there's going to be a whole new phase of geopolitics now, which is going to be the strategy of denial. This book. So the Americans will seek to deny the world's economy to China and the world's technology to China. And China will be under pressure to independently match the US technologically, and maybe surpass the US technologically, especially in the realm of AI, artificial intelligence, both machine learning and all of that. So it's going to be a very, very intense tussle which is coming up this decade. And Russia will not stay neutral. Russia will be happy to have a good relationship with the US, but Russia needs China to remain in the position that it is today. And Russia is obviously happy that there are frictions between China and the US, because otherwise China becomes too powerful. So Russia wants neither China to be too powerful or the US to be too powerful. Russia is happy the way things are right now. It wants some adjustment, realignment. It wants the Ukraine war to end. It wants to be reintegrated into the Western economy, but it will not take the US's side against China. It will, in the event of a war. Okay, very complicated scenario, but it is not in Russia's interests to see China defeated by the US. Kushagra Kalashnikov says, what's the next step after the US creates and unleashes ASI? Will the Americans form a world government? What is Russia, China, and India's next move? And why aren't these powers putting out all of their resources into AI if it's that much of a game changer? Or would it be best for us to just give up at this point? Okay, ASI, artificial superintelligence. Let me just remind everybody what these terms mean. What does AGI mean? What does ASI mean in the context of artificial intelligence? Now everybody knows that there is something called artificial intelligence in the world. You have all these programs, all these companies, OpenAI, Anthropic, and DeepSeek, and whatnot. The French have something called Mistral. So all these companies have produced AI systems, pretty powerful ones and very useful ones, and these are available at a charge, for a monthly charge, to viewers, and you can use them for whatever purpose. Some are image generators, some can generate videos, some can generate music. Most of them are text based things that will output text based on whatever prompt you give them, and so on. You can see over the past couple of years how increasingly sophisticated these systems are becoming. So what, in the context of all this, what is AGI? What is artificial general intelligence, AGI? AGI is an AI system, artificially intelligent system, that has a human equivalent 130 IQ, which has the equivalent of a human with 130 IQ. So I think the average IQ in the world must be in the 90s. In some countries like Eastern Asia, etc., the average IQ is around 105, 110. I think if you have an IQ of 100, you are a reasonably well-functioning human being. If you have IQ 120, you are pretty intelligent. 130 is very intelligent. I think 150 plus is genius level. So 130 is, if a person has IQ 130, that's a pretty intelligent person. Really, like elite level intelligence, maybe top 10% or something. I'm not sure exactly what, but that probably top 10%. So if an AI system has that sort of IQ, that's what we call AGI, artificial general intelligence. Obviously, that's not all it is. It has to be, it has to have human-like characteristics and other things. But for the sake of oversimplifying things, let's call an AGI system a system with the same IQ as a 130 IQ human, same abilities as a 130 IQ human. What is ASI, artificial superintelligence? ASI is an AI system whose intelligence is equal to a human with 300 or 500 IQ. And such humans don't exist. That is superhuman intelligence. So an ASI system, artificially super intelligent system, is the natural progression of what happens after a system becomes AGI. It can start iteratively improving itself and becoming more and more intelligent and capable. And eventually you have ASI, artificial superintelligence. An ASI system will be able to develop and devise technologies and scientific breakthroughs that can only exist in the realm of science fiction or magic today. So once a country develops an ASI system, that country can very rapidly develop magic like technologies that will look like magic to you. Okay, they'll be able to have incredibly advanced propulsion systems. They'll be able to have aircraft that travel 20 times the speed of sound. They'll be able to colonize moon next week if they want. They'll be able to have people on Mars by next quarter. They'll be able to have nuclear fusion uh, in a glass, okay, on at room temperature. They'll these systems will devise technologies and substances you can't even imagine today, and such a nation will very rapidly put a huge gap between itself and everybody else. And if they play their cards right, they will be able to ensure that no other nation can ever catch up, and they will have the technologies to remotely prevent other nations from developing such technologies. So when you develop ASI, you don't unleash it, you keep it secret, but you unleash it in secret. So you will have UFO like technologies and everything you have seen in science fiction and magic. So that's what ASI is, and that's why AI is the biggest arms race right now. So the Chinese are very much in the race. Yes, their deep six systems are supposed to be even probably better than most of the open AI systems and so on. And Claude apparently at 3.7 or whatever is exceptional, perhaps in coding and whatnot. So the US and China are neck to neck right now. The French are kind of in the fray with their Mistral system. And the Indian government has said that by the end of this year, we will have our own large language model. Wonderful. What are you going to do with it? Why do you want it? Do you want it just because everybody has one, so I also should have one? India has always had the attitude of doing something that people did 20 years ago. We should do it now. And in the AI world, 6 months is like 20 years. Or 2 years is like 20 years. So I think India needs to really, really put a lot of effort into this. The Indian government has the resources has all the resources, the money and manpower and brilliant students and brilliant kids, everything we have. We just need focused effort and leadership. So India could catch up, in the next 2 years with these nations. We could. I'm not sure what Russia's deal is. Maybe they are doing things in secret. They have been denied technology by the US, chips, GPUs and whatnot, even the Chinese. But the Chinese are making their own chips and they're making do with the chips that are not bleeding edge. Yeah, so if India starts becoming an AI power, we will also face sanctions like the Chinese are facing. Okay, don't worry, that will happen. But that shows that you arrive on the big stage. So it's gonna be, see, the AI race is gonna determine who rules the world for the next 1,000 years. It's that big of a deal. Most people don't see how big of a deal it is, but it is that big of a deal. And once a nation has ASI, they're going to very rapidly, in a couple of months, put a huge gap between them and everybody else, and they'll be unbeatable. And they will actively use their technological advances to deny any other nation from progressing. Now, when you have that sort of power, why would you want to form a one world government? Why not just take over the world? And look, to govern other nations takes a lot of effort. AI can do it, I'm sure, when you have ASI. But instead of having having physical occupation of nations and all, you can just vassalize them and that sort of thing. But yeah, it will be some form of world government. So whichever nation develops ASI technology will be the ruler of the world for probably the next 1,000 years. If they are able to deny everybody else, prevent other nations from gaining such technology, and then they will rule the world in some form or other. So it will be one nation that rules the whole world, which you can call a world government. So that's the big stakes. That's the huge race that's on right now. It's the 21st century version of the 20th century Cold War arms race, and the winner will be apparent in the next 2-3 years. Next 2-3 years, we'll know who's going to rule the world for the next 1,000 years. Shraddha Kulkarni says, did the Khilafat movement actually have an impact over India's freedom struggle, or was it just another publicity stunt by Mr. Gandhi? Was the movement really necessary, and did it actually unite Indians? Okay. Okay, a question about history. The Khilafat movement. What was this Khilafat movement? It was a movement to restore the Islamic Caliphate. The Caliphate is an institution in Islam, and whoever is the Caliph, the Khalifa, whatever they call it, is the ruler of all Muslims worldwide. Historically, it's been that way. So you've had various caliphates in the past, the Umayyad Caliphate and the Rashidun Caliphate, and various other caliphates, and eventually the Ottoman Caliphate, which was the last great caliphate. So the caliphs have ruled from Baghdad, they've ruled from Cairo, they've ruled from Mecca or Medina, one of these two cities, and eventually from Constantinople, Istanbul, right? So ever since the Ottoman Empire became a major force, the Ottoman emperor, whoever it was, declared himself to be the caliph, and then this institution continued with the Ottoman Sultanate. So whoever was the Ottoman king, after whichever one was the person who started this, whoever was the Ottoman emperor would also be called the caliph, and the caliphate was based out of Constantinople. Now, in the early 20th century, the Ottoman Empire was on its last legs. It had become an extremely corrupt and powerless institution. The caliph's power was limited just to his palace and his harem, essentially. And in the 1920s or somewhere, I think 21, 22, or maybe 1919, after the end of the Second World War, or when the World War was First World War, and when the First World War was ending, the great Turkish general Mustafa Kemal Ataturk announced his intention to abolish the caliphate, to abolish the institution of the caliph. And after the Turkish War of Independence, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk actually abolished the caliphate, and he expelled the last Ottoman emperor and caliph out of Turkey. And today, the descendants of the Ottoman emperors, they live in the US and other countries in the West. Okay. So Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, the Turkish dictator who then became the dictator, he abolished the caliphate. And this caused a global outcry among the Muslims of the world, because they loved their caliph and whatever, I don't know. So in India, a number of prominent Muslim politicians, etc., they launched a movement called the Khilafat movement, which was a movement to restore the caliphate. And the objective was to unify the Muslims of India. They knew that sitting in India and Turkey is so far away, Constantinople is so far away, we can't really have a say in what happens, but let's launch a movement to bring awareness among Indian Muslims and to unify Indian Muslims in a common cause. And there were a number of Muslim politicians involved in this. So Mr. Mohandas Gandhi, he said, wow, what a wonderful thing. Let us also participate in this matter. So Mr. Gandhi said that we support the Congress party supports the Khilafat movement. Okay. And Mr. Gandhi was a very prominent politician by that time. And so he brought the Khilafat movement into the mainstream consciousness of India. Until that time, it was just a fringe kind of movement. Some politicians were pushing for it, and their great objective was to unify the Indian Muslims through this movement. But nobody knew about those politicians. I forget the names of the politicians. Many of them eventually became a big deal because of Mr. Gandhi's support. So this was a fringe movement. Nobody in India knew or cared about this. And it had no impact. It had no relevance in India. What happens in Constantinople has no relevance in India, especially in the 1920s. And it had nothing to do with the Indian freedom struggle at all. It had nothing to do with the British occupation of India and the British oppression and destruction of India's economy and all that. Nothing. It had nothing to do with us. But Mr. Gandhi, in his wisdom, said that we need to support this movement. So he brought this obscure fringe movement into the mainstream. And he told everybody, all Indians who supported him, that we must support the Khilafat movement. So everybody started supporting it. and it made those obscure politicians who started the movement in India, it made them into a very big deal. Eventually, they became the leaders of the partition movement of India. Many of them. Okay, they would have remained in obscurity had Mr. Gandhi not elevated them out of nothingness into the national mainstream. And most Indians who were supporting this movement, they had no idea what this movement was. Khilafat sounds like khilaf, which means against, right? So most Indians thought that it's a movement to oppose the British. It is in khilaf of the British. So let's support this movement. Most Indians had no idea. They had no idea this was a movement to support an Islamic caliphate. They had no idea it was a movement in support of Sharia law and so on and so forth. Okay, they had no idea about this. So Mr. Gandhi just led everybody along. It essentially was the germination of the movement for India's partition. The Khilafat movement became the partition movement. The idea of partition may have started in the 19th century in the minds of one or two people, and they wrote about this and so on. But such a movement never became mainstream until Mr. Gandhi brought it into the mainstream. So this movement was not necessary at all. Mr. Gandhi's his support for this movement was, I just don't understand the logic. Why was it needed to do this? It was not necessary. It did not unite Indians. Those who supported Mr. Gandhi supported the movement. It was not a movement that united Indians, but it brought the anti-nationals into prominence. It gave them tremendous political capital. It brought them into the national mainstream consciousness, and it gave them the political capital to start the partition movement. And that's what eventually led to the partition of India. Yeah. And I have this talk on YouTube on another channel called The Turkish Origins of India's Partition. Maybe I should revisit that and do that again for this channel. Yeah. Anyhow, a good question, Shraddha. Spandan Mukherjee says, why are Indians portrayed as impoverished in series depicting Ramayana and Mahabharat? Wasn't India the richest country back then? You see, the problem is that these people who direct these series and all that, these people have no idea of the true history of India. I remember when I had seen many years ago the original Ramayana series, it showed Indians in poverty in that also. There was no poverty in India back then. I don't know how many thousands of years ago. India was, especially during the Ramayana era, a more agrarian, more pastoral kind of society. It wasn't the during the Ramayana era, India was not the urbanized society that it was during the Sindhu Saraswati era or the Mahabharata era. But there was no poverty in India whatsoever before the Turkic and Christian occupations of India. So these individuals who direct these series, they have no idea of India's true history, and they think that India has always been like this, and that's why people are depicted in poverty in these TV series, Ramayana and Mahabharat. It's sad to see that. It's so annoying to see how history is distorted. Maybe they're well-meaning people or whatever, but yeah, there are lots of distortions of history and of the original stories in TV serials about Mahabharata and Ramayana. And because of this, people who learn about the Mahabharata and Ramayana from these series, they absorb these fake stories. And they believe that someone like Karna, for example, was superior to Arjun, and he was discriminated against because of his caste. And Iklavya was also discriminated against because of his caste, and so on. All these stupid, nonsensical delusions enter people's minds because of the way these TV serials are crafted. It's terrible. Mudra Makwana says, I saw your video on delusions that India has, and I wanted to ask a follow-up question. Where do you think India really stands with respect to superpowers like the US and other countries like China, Russia, etc.? I see that India is certainly on the right path of success and becoming a great country. At least that's the general sentiment. But in reality, where does India really stand? And when and how do you think India will reach the level of top nations like the US? India is currently, I look at the world from a very realistic hard power perspective. To hell with soft power and all this nonsense. What matters is hard power. Hard power is economic might plus military might, and some other factors that are all material factors. Okay, so from that perspective, India is the fourth most powerful nation in the world. Number one in the world, you have the US, the most powerful nation, superpower. Number two is Russia, which is about half as strong as the US. So if the US has a hard power score of, let's say, 100, then Russia has a score of 50. Number three is China, and China is about 20 on the hard power scale, roughly almost a third of Russia. And India is about 5 on the hard power score, about a fourth, about roughly a fourth of China, a third or fourth, maybe 6 or something on the hard power scale, India. And then you have France, which is about 5, slightly below India. So that's where India stands. India's power is about one third of China, about 1/10 of Russia, and about 1/20th that of the US. That's where we stand in the world's pecking order. Number 4, but nowhere close to the top 3. That's where we stand with respect to genuine big powers. Okay, that's simply the way it is. And if people get upset to hear that, well, the facts don't care about anyone's feelings. Now, uh, is India on the path to success? Yes and no. There are good things happening in India, no question about it. India's economy has done tremendously well the past 10 years. We have almost doubled our GDP in the past 10 years. A lot of infrastructure has been created in the last 10 years. A lot of infrastructure, highways, railways, airports, whatnot has been built in the past 10 years. Tremendous progress. Extreme poverty is almost like negligible levels now in India. Nobody starves to death anymore. Okay, so much has improved in India. Indians today genuinely aspire for so much more, and lots of Indians believe we are almost close to being a superpower. So that's how much India has changed in the past 10, 20, whatever years. So a lot is going in the right direction. India's economic growth. India is the only major economy that has zero chance of recession, which will keep on growing. So that's again great for India. Our military strength is good. What is also great is that we are an independent space power. We don't need to depend on anybody for satellite launches or anything. That's great for India. That's a great asset to have. And what really ensures our sovereignty is the nuclear deterrent that we have and the means to deliver those nuclear warheads. All of that is great. So we are definitely on the right track in all these things. No question about it. But we have significant problems. The education system is a disaster. And because of the education system, how poor it is, Indians live in a delusional world. Indians don't know how to think. They are afraid to ask questions. They don't even know what questions to ask of themselves, of others, or anything. They don't know how to think critically. It's very easy to fool Indians through propaganda and media narratives, and so on. So many problems with the education system that needs to be fixed. That's number one. Number two, India's biggest problem is corruption. What you going to do about that? Is anything being done about that? Unfortunately, no. Third, the political system is completely unsuitable for a nation like India. The Westminster democracy that we have, the parliamentary system, a much better system of democracy would have been the presidential system for India, in which things get done much faster. And the gigantically bloated and inefficient bureaucracy is a huge drag on India. And like I said, corruption is the worst thing that India is suffering from, and nobody even dares to speak about it. The whole nation allegedly runs on corruption. And then we have issues like 100 million illegal immigrants, at least in India. Bangladeshis, Rohingyas, and cookies and whatnot. So many issues. So all these issues will ensure that India never becomes a great power. We'll keep on going in the right direction, but we'll never become genuinely great. We'll never fulfill our true potential. So these things need to be addressed. We have the potential to be the greatest nation in the world, the most powerful nation in the world. But right now, we are not Vishwaguru, we are Vishwakuli. And we are not superpower, we are number 4, barely. And nowhere close to even China. Forget about Russia or the US. These are hard facts. We have all the potential, but we need drastic reforms, significant surgery. Who will dare to do it? Which leader will have the cojones to do it is the question. Apologies for that Spanish word. Geopolitical Dubey says Vivek Ramaswamy is no longer in Doge, but he is contesting the Ohio governor election. What's he trying to achieve? Vivek Ramaswamy has seen quite a decline in his political fortunes. He was at one time in contention against President Trump for the Republican nomination for president. Of course, he stood down after he made a significant impact and became very much front and center in the national consciousness in the US. So it made him a very big deal in the US. Then he was hoping for a significant cabinet position under Trump's presidency. Did not happen. He was made number 2 in Doge under Elon Musk. And then it looks like he was shunted out of Doge itself, the Department of Government Efficiency. And right now, the public perception of him, his public perception isn't great because of a tweet he put out in which he criticized the American population for not having high enough standards. Imagine a brown man criticizing white people for not having high enough standards. So it doesn't work like that in the US. So yeah, that's gone against him. Yeah, right now the opinion, the public opinion of him isn't great. So he's no longer anywhere at the top level. And he's not even in Doge now. Elon Musk probably had him shunted out in when the opportunity presented itself. And now he is running for the governorship of Ohio. So look, Vivek has made his money. He's a billionaire. Whichever way he made it, whatever, doesn't matter. He's a billionaire. He has no worries about money or anything, career. He wants to be a big deal worldwide. He wants to have a political career. He hopes to be the president of the US one day. Yeah. So to do that, to become the president, you have to prove yourself politically. You have to either prove yourself in the Trump administration, maybe as one of the members of the cabinet, like the Secretary of State, which is the foreign minister, or something similar, or you have to have political experience as the governor of a state. So if you are the governor of a big state like Ohio, significantly large state, and if you do it well for a number of years, then yeah, it tells the people that yeah, this guy can govern and he is capable. So yeah, he did not get anything significant in the Trump cabinet, anything significant at all. So now it makes sense for him to run for the governorship of Ohio. His first job is to win the governorship, which itself is difficult. And if he's able to win, then he has to govern well and do a great job as governor. So it's a long road ahead of him, lots of obstacles. It's not going to be easy. But what he's trying to achieve is to demonstrate to the nation that he is serious and that he is capable. And what he's eventually trying to achieve is to someday become the president of the US. That's his agenda. That's the ambition that he has. But he has to be careful, and he's a very smart guy, Vivek Ramaswamy, super smart guy. But he needs to be careful. He doesn't become super annoying. See, there are various kinds of smart people. There are in a classroom. There are some kids who are the teacher's pet. They'll sit in the front bench, they'll raise their hand for every question, and they'll have the right answer every time. Super smart, always the right answer, very obedient. The teachers love them. And then there are the smart kids who sit in the back benches who don't care about answering questions, but they end up being the millionaires and billionaires. So Vivek is one of those who was in the front benches, apparently, it looks like, and he also became a billionaire. But such kids can be very annoying. The kid who knows everything, the kid who has something to teach everybody else all the time, you got to be careful about that. Vivek is in danger of being that annoying kid right now. So he needs to be careful. Let's see how it goes for him. Okay, we are reaching the end of today's session. Still some time to go. Let's take some more questions. Himanshu says, I've observed that within Canada, immigrants from India tend to socialize primarily within their own regional groups. For example, Gujarati individuals often associate with other Gujaratis, while those from Kerala will form their own circles. As a result, there seems to be a lack of overall unity. How can we foster a more inclusive and cohesive Indian community where people from diverse backgrounds interact and connect with each other? A good question. That's true. Indians, wherever we go, wherever we are outside India, we will have these small circles of people who speak the same language. Gujaratis will be only with Gujaratis. Punjabis, all Punjabis together. Tamils, all Tamil together. Telugus, all Telugus together. Malayalis, all Malayalis together. All separate, right? That's very common among Indians. Forget about that. Okay, if you have lived in a hostel as a student, then you will see that even in hostels there are these small circles of kids who speak the same language, and they'll all be friends together. That's just a thing you see among Indians. Indians seem to prioritize their sub-national identities more than their national identity. It's always about language. Sometimes it's about religion. Sometimes, apparently, sometimes it's about region, and so on. And that's just an Indian characteristic. We are such a diverse nation that this is how it is. And the only thing that can bring Indians together is if there's an existential threat from somewhere. So I don't know. It would be nice to see Indians all merge together and be, and behave as one common group instead of always having the subdivisions. Um, Another thing you see among Indians outside of India, especially in North America, is they, like you said, they have their own circles, and they tend to not mingle too much with the locals. So you can spend a whole week in, even if you're a professional in the US, let's say, you can spend most of your time speaking in Indian language because you have so many Indians around you, and you'll hardly interact with the locals, the Americans. You see that all the time in the US. So this insulationist kind of approach that Indians have. They need to break out of it, mingle with everybody, mingle with other Indians who speak other languages than yours. Why do you need to be so insular like that? So I'm not sure how to change this mindset. The only thing that can change the mindset, if there's an existential threat to India, that's the only thing that can probably bring all Indians together. But we don't want that, of course, don't we? Okay. Abhinav Deep says, in this modern world, marriage is becoming a joke. Some women openly say just attach to marriage for 2-3 years and they then take alimony and enjoy yourself. Some suicide cases of men are frequently appearing in the media nowadays. Family values are vanishing. Is this all because women have more constitutional rights between men and women? Modern women do not care about family values. What's the deal? There are lots of issues. First of all, yeah, constitution and law, right? Our constitution, the Indian constitution and Indian laws are not rooted in India's cultural and civilizational values. Absolutely not at all. Our constitution and our laws are Western in nature. Absolutely nothing to do with Indian culture. So they have Western values and morality. And then you have the case of the Indian education system, which is a colonial system. You may realize it or not, it's a colonial system. It doesn't teach. India is the only nation in the world where the education system doesn't teach you your culture and your values. It deracinates you. It uproots you and distances you from your culture. So is it people's fault that they don't care about family values, cultural tradition, or any of that? It's not their fault. The education system does that to you. The media does it to you. The entertainment industry does it to you. The laws do it to you. Everything. So yeah, there's people are hardly attached to the culture anymore. People don't even know what their culture is. And then you have the law, the Indian law, the constitution, that is just like the Western laws. So there have been so many cases like this. I mean, there was this cricketer recently who married this woman for a year or two. I don't know how long. And apparently I hear that he has to pay her like 50 crores of alimony. Why? Why? What has he done to deserve this? If someone marries you for 2 years and then she divorces you, does it mean she gets to have 50 crores? What the hell? And apparently, I hear that the law always favors women or men, and so on. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. There are so many issues to unpack in this. The constitution and laws are completely alien to Indian culture and civilizational values. Completely, completely foreign in nature. It's like we are still under foreign occupation, and foreign laws apply to us. And also, we are still under foreign occupation, and a foreign education system is thrust upon us that deracinates us. And the end result is all this. The end result is all this. So we're gonna see, over time, higher rates of divorce and all that. And the system victimizes men always. So if there's a divorce, the look, I have nothing against any gender. I don't care. Everybody should be treated equally. The system cannot be loaded against one gender, which is men today. So people accuse the whole system is rigged against men. Essentially, it looks like. So if there's a divorce, the man will have to pay, I don't know what, huge alimony and maintenance, and child rights also are an issue. Um, who gets custody of the child, that's also an issue, and so on. Lots of issues. The whole system is an absolute mess. There's so much potential in India, but the whole system is destroying it. So sad to see this. Okay. The question is, please take up this question. I've been asking for a long time. The question is, given the paramount knowledge you have of the various fields, why didn't you become an IAS or IFS officer? You could have easily scored AIR, All India Rank 1. I was told that as a kid. That why don't you? I mean, as a student, when I was a student in college, university, people used to tell me, why don't you go and apply for the IAS? Um, Whatever that exam is, and you'll do really well. So I never bothered to do that exam and try to become an IAS, IFS, IPS, whatever officer. It never appealed to me. Look, if you clear the exam, you're gonna become either an IAS or IPS or IFS officer. You're gonna be a government servant. IFS is a very rare case. At that time, as a kid, as a student, I didn't even know much about the Indian Foreign Service. It was mainly the IAS that people spoke about. So what happens? You become a bureaucrat. If you do well, you're gonna become a collector or a district magistrate or some powerful position, in which case you're gonna have a whole district under you, and everybody is gonna come to you and do sir to you. But the truth is that you're going to report to a politician. That politician may be 10th fail, possibly. And you're going to have to do yes, sir to him, that politician. And you're just a public servant. And the whole system, allegedly, to a very large extent, one hears, allegedly, that it is very allegedly corrupt. So you're going to have to be part of that. And that never appealed to me. Taking orders from people who you should never have to take orders from, and participating in allegedly in corruption, and aiding and abetting alleged corruption, all that. Just taking orders. You don't really have any power of your own. Yeah, you can feel all powerful when people come to as supplicants to have you solve the problems. You might feel like you're powerful, but you're just taking orders. You're just a machine in a bigger machine. This has never appealed to me. You lose all your autonomy. You're always at someone's service. You lose all autonomy. You lose your independence, your freedom. This has never appealed to me. That's why I never did that. So that's the answer to your question. Okay. God's servant says, I'm a former powerlifter and a fitness freak. I follow my Sanatan Dharma. I grew up eating meat and fish and also worship the great goddess. Now I'm practicing plant-based diet, which has been 1.5 years now, and I'm back to powerlifting as my entrance is complete. Good. Within this 1.5 years, I can see my health deteriorates. My question is it allowed in Sanatan Dharma to eat fish and meats? Is food a question of morality? I also know that supporting poultry and eating meat greatly hampers the planet. I don't know what to do. What should I do? This is a very controversial question, and a lot of people will hate me for what I'll say. Look, in Sanatan Dharma, in all dharmic religions, in the dharmic world, whether it's Jaina Dharma, Bauddha Dharma, Hindu Dharma, or whatever else you may have or may not have, in Dharma, it is always preferable to live a life of non-violence that doesn't cause cruelty to any living beings as far as possible. That is preferable. A life of ahimsa is preferable. So what it means is that being a vegetarian is preferable, and it is seen as superior to being a non-vegetarian. Okay, that is unambiguously clear in dharma, in Sanatan dharma. But this comes with caveats. Let's say your dharma or your karma is that of a warrior. Okay, let's say you're kshatriya, let's say you're a king, you're a rajput or whatever, in 500 years ago, and your job is to defend civilization from the barbarians. Now if you are eating a non-violent plant-based diet, do you think you'll be able to do your duty properly? No. And that's why it is acceptable in Sanatana Dharma for people in certain occupations that need more energy and protein and all that to eat meat. It is acceptable. Absolutely acceptable. Some people may not like what I say. Well, I can't please everybody. Sorry. I'm just going to say what I know is right. So it is preferable in Sanatana Dharma to not eat meat, to be vegetarian, but it is acceptable to eat meat if you want to live a certain kind of lifestyle, as long as you don't cause any unnecessary cruelty. So there are ways of acquiring meat that are less cruel than other ways. You know what I mean? I think we all know what it means. So do it the right way. I think it is okay as a dharmic person to eat meat if you want to live a certain lifestyle and serve society and do good in the world, and maybe it makes you happier. So you can do it, but always remember, don't be cruel. Cause as little cruelty in the world as possible. So yeah, it is morally superior to be non-vegetarian. It is to be vegetarian. It is morally superior to be completely non-violent. But in the real world, things don't always work that way. So I would say that it's okay to eat meat. That's what I would say. If you find that being vegetarian makes you weaker and your health is deteriorating, go for it. I'm sure even various religious saints, I don't know which one it was. Okay, I'll not take names because I don't remember, but many gurus have also said that it's okay to eat meat if you need to. Yeah, there you have it. Life is Meaningful says, what do you think about religion's impact on science and technology in India? Are you an atheist, and are atheists generally smarter? See, when we talk about religion, the term religion, it doesn't really apply to civilizational things like Sanatana Dharma. The dharmic system is not a religious system. Religion is a foreign term to India. There have been, if you go back in Indian history and look at all the great scientists and scholars of India, whether it is Brahmagupta, whether it is Aryabhatta, whether it is whoever, they've all been deeply, deeply religious, but also been the greatest of astronomers and mathematicians and whatnot. Look at Ramanujan. Ramanujan was an incredibly intense devotee of goddess Namagiri. He said that she used to come to him in his dreams and give him the equations that he would have to wake up and quickly note down. Not a single one of his equations has been proven to be wrong. Those equations are shocking when you look at them. So look, when it comes to Hindu Dharma, when it comes to the dharmic umbrella, dharmic system, it has never been anti-science. It's always been a system of inquiry, of skepticism, of learning something new. Don't ever be dogmatic. That's always been the system. So in India, it's always been an enabler of science and technology. Okay. Am I an atheist? I'm not an atheist. Absolutely not. Are atheists generally smarter? Let me just say it as it is. I think atheists are generally, not always, but generally dumber. Okay. Question from Twitter, from X. Cricket question by Robbie Plant, one of my favorite singers. Is leg spin a dying art today? And which is the most difficult variation to bowl in cricket? Good question. Do I have ball? Yeah, I have a ball here. That's a tennis ball. Cricket question. Well, is leg spin a dying art today? Leg spin has never been a dying art, but it's a rare art. Among all the different kinds of bowling variations, off spin, leg spin, medium pace, left arm spin, fast bowling, whatever, among all of these different kinds of bowling, leg spin is the hardest to master. And it's also the hardest to play if you're a batsman. It's the hardest thing to master because it's unnatural. The movement is unnatural. You have to spin the ball with your wrist, not with your fingers. This is off spin, that's leg spin. And you have so few leg spinners typically at any period in time in history. There was a rarity of a time when you had three leg spinners: Mushtaq Ahmed, Shane Warne, Anil Kumble. They were all different from each other. So leg spin is extremely difficult to master or to even bowl reasonably well. Today, who are the leg spinners that we have? Today, you have Kuldeep Yadav, a lefty leg spinner. You have Tabrez Shamsi, also a lefty leg spinner, Chinaman bowler. You have, what's the Australian guy? What's his name? Zampa. Adam Zampa? I think it's Adam Zampa. And who else do you have today? I can't think of anybody else today. So we don't have too many leg spinners today. It's because it's so hard. Leg spin is so hard. It's so hard to control and land the ball with the right amount of revolutions and land the ball in the right place and so on. It's so hard. You'll see leg spinners bowl way too many full tosses generally. It's because it's so hard to control. It's because of the biomechanics of the action and the physics of the action. But if you get it right, it's incredibly difficult to play as a batsman. So it's not a dying art. It's a rare art. It's the dark art of cricket. Leg spin is, which is the most difficult ball to bowl in cricket. I would say it's a flipper. It's a leg spin variation. In leg spin, you have different deliveries. You've got the standard leg spinner, which is this way. Then you have the top spinner, which you bowl like that. Okay. And then you have the googly, which you bowl like that, with your back of the hand facing the batsman. Your front arm also drops a little when you bowl a googly. So, but the flipper is a ball that's almost impossible to pick and extremely difficult to bowl, because a flipper, you load up like a top spinner, but you flip it out from the back of your hand. So you do it like that, like that. You do almost like click your fingers that way. And it's incredibly hard to master and incredibly hard to play. I mean, you can't even usually see it coming. So today, do you see anybody bowling a flipper in cricket? Any leg spinner? Kuldeep Yadav, Tabrez Shamsi, Adam Zampa. Who was the South African Pakistani guy recently? Imran Tahir, was it? He didn't bowl the flipper. Nobody bowls the flipper today. Did Kumble bowl the flipper? He did not. Did Mushtaq Ahmed bowl the flipper? He did not. Abdul Qadir bowled it. Shane Warne was the best bowler of flippers ever. But the flipper is really hard to bowl. I think it's the hardest ball in cricket, and it puts a tremendous amount of strain on this muscle, the muscle of your middle finger, because generally these two fingers, the middle finger and the thumb, that's involved. So yeah, I think the flipper is the hardest ball to bowl, and that's why nobody bowls it. And how do I know all this? Because I used to be a leg spinner as a kid. I was a leg spinner until I was like 12, 13. Then I grew taller, so I switched to bowling fast. And I played a bit of cricket in school and a bit in college as well, a little bit. So yeah, I used to bowl leg spin, and it's an incredibly it's a dark art. If you can bowl well, my God, nobody can play you. So yeah, I used to bowl that. Why did I switch to fast bowling? Because I grew taller and bigger and stronger, and I found that in India, apart from leg spin, the one thing that frightens batsmen even more is fast bowling. So if you have the ability to do that, do that. So there you have it. Do we have any other questions? I think we have one or two more questions. Or should I just take questions from the live chat now? Maybe I'll just do that. All right, peoples. Akhil Prem says Kuldeep bowls the flipper. Really? I've never seen Kuldeep bowl the flipper. Do you even know what the flipper is? It's not the top spinner. It is a delivery that goes straight, but the flipper is flicked down like this with the top spinner kind of action, but it's flicked down like this. It is a ball. So I'll tell you what a flipper is like. It's a ball that will float further towards the batsman because of the Magnus effect, because you have put this backspin on the ball. So the ball will float further towards the batsman, and after pitching, it stays low. It skids on. And you generally bowl the flipper faster. and you make it look like a shorter ball, like a ball that's too short, and the batsman tries to cut or pull, but then it comes skids onto the batsman at like super speed. And yeah, Kuldeep does not ball the flipper. I assure you, he bowls the top spinner. I'm sure he bowls the top spinner, which is a different delivery, which is a ball that loops and dips and then bounces more. The flipper is the exact opposite of a top spinner. It doesn't loop, it doesn't dip, it floats further towards the batsman. It pitches further towards the batsman than the batsman expects, and it stays low, it skids. So it's a very different kind of ball. Karan says, my passion for pure math is waning. I find it too abstract and filled with theorems and proofs. I once aspired to be a mathematician, but now I feel uncertain. Should I pursue a master's or not? Look, if you've lost your passion, the thrill is gone, like BB King would say, then don't do it. Don't force yourself to do that. Pure math is not for everybody. You need to be slightly insane to be someone who goes into pure math, because there's no real career outside of a university in pure math. As an applied mathematician, there's career everywhere. You can go into the stock market. You can go into anything. There's a huge demand for applied mathematicians. Pure math, it's not for everybody. So if your passion for pure math is waning, then don't pursue a master's degree in pure math. Go into applied math, or go into some an allied field like physics or tech or engineering or whatever. You obviously, if you have mathematical skills, then you can use them elsewhere. So I would say, don't force yourself to to follow a passion that is no longer there. Be practical and use the skills that you've acquired in a practical way. Okay. Okay, let's see, what else do we have. स्पर्श करण ब्रो, इधर से आंसर नहीं मिलेगा, मैं पोस्ट में पूछना आस्क अभिजीत 235 के लिए, बट I answered him. So Amisha says, why are Indian politicians obsessed with Aurangzeb every now and then? And now he's being discussed. Left always praises him and the right side doesn't like him. Why is this happening? I think the media creates a lot of these controversies. Okay. And certain politicians of certain inclinations have this affinity towards Aurangzeb, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. So Aurangzeb was one of the cruelest and bloodthirstiest kings who ruled India. Foreigner, despite being born in India, doesn't make him an Indian. He tried his best to destroy India's culture, civilization, all that. If you look at the New York Times statistics by a left organization, he killed at least 10 million Indians, according to New York Times statistics, and so on. Whatever the numbers are, he was definitely a genocide, a perpetrator of genocide. So obviously he's going to evoke strong feelings among Indians, and most Indians obviously will despise him for the horrific acts that he did. So yeah, but the left in India, the left is anti-national, mostly, most of them, not all, I'm sure. Some of them may be genuinely leftists from a sense of believing that it's right, but I would say many leftists are anti-national. Not all. I'm sure some of them are nice. So the left is anti-national, most of it. So they will praise him, obviously, and so on. So in India, the news cycle is full of shouting and outrage and people yelling at each other. So it's tailor-made for the news cycle. And then politicians get involved because politicians also want to be part of the shouting, so that they can further their whatever agenda is currently there today. So that's how it goes. Okay, what else do we have? I've already spoken about Ranveer, so I'll not go into that matter again. Okay, let me see. See, this is why I don't take generally a whole session only from the live chat, because I have to look at all the questions and try and find a good question. Okay, Sergeant Skyland says, will there be a new nation called Balochistan? Look, we'll see. We know, right? Viewers of the Ask Abhijit show know very well that Pakistan is an artificial temporary nation, a temporary artificial nation, and sooner or later, it will take a different shape and form. So So nations like Balochistan eventually may emerge out of Pakistan. It probably is a matter of time. POK and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa goes back to Afghanistan. It'll be nice to see that. Yes, our Pashtun friends can have the territories back. And Gilgit Baltistan, POK comes back to India. Punjabistan can remain independent on its own. And Sindhu Desh becomes independent again, and hopefully Balochistan too. It will happen sooner or later. How soon or how later depends on a variety of factors. But it's, look, artificial temporary nations don't last forever. So yeah. Tejas says, I am doing well. I'm glad to hear that, sir. I know that you had some health issues. Please take care of your health, and I'm happy to know that you're doing well. You want to hear my views about Trump's latest tweet about sanctioning Russia? Well, I'm not aware of it. Let me see. Let's go to Trump Twitter. Let's put that on the screen, and let's try and take a look at this together. Trump's latest tweet about sanctioning Russia. So let's see tweets by real Donald Trump. What's he have to say? DJ Trump. What do we have? Thank you for joining. Zelenskyy. This is from March 1. This is for February 20. This is old. So let me see the POTUS account. Let's see the POTUS account. Which what does he have to say here? Jan 23 hours. Okay, let's see this. Based on the fact that Russia is absolutely pounding Ukraine on the battlefield right now, I'm strongly considering large-scale banking sanctions and tariffs on Russia until the ceasefire and final settlement of peace is reached. To Russia and Ukraine, get to the table right now before it's too late. Thank you. Okay, so this is standard negotiating tactics. I'm glad you spoke about this. I was not aware of this. This is from March 7th. It's from today. 8 p.m. Okay, just an hour before I started this live stream. So I wasn't aware of this latest tweet. So what Trump is saying is that, so look, what happens now? Putin and Trump have spoken on the telephone, right? And they both agreed that we need to come to the negotiating table and finalize the ceasefire agreement. That has already been discussed a few days ago. Then Zelenskyy comes to the US to finalize the minerals deal, but he completely upends the thing and goes and insults his hosts and doesn't sign the deal, and then he goes to Europe. And then the European nations say that we will keep the war going, keep it going on. You cannot have a ceasefire without involving the European nations. Who the hell are they to say that to the two big powers, right? So when this sort of situation happens, Putin will say, okay, let me start a new military offensive just to remind everybody that I am in a position if I want to completely take the whole of Ukraine without a ceasefire. So then Trump says, okay, this cannot happen. So Trump is just putting a word of caution over there. So he's saying to Russia and Ukraine, get to the table right now, which means Russia essentially. And in Ukraine means Zelenskyy needs to just sign on the dotted line. Otherwise, he's in trouble. So yeah, Trump is also there. So that's why Trump has put out this tweet. So probably Russia is now reminding the world that, you know what, if you guys don't want a ceasefire, I'm perfectly okay with that. I can take Ukraine just without a ceasefire. So Trump is just putting a word of caution on there. Okay. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Let's finalize the deal. So that's the deal. Very good to know that very good that you pointed this out and we could discuss this. And I think with that, we're going to end today's session. All right. Thank you so much for all the questions. It was a great session. Really enjoyed the last little segment in which we took questions from the live chat. And I will see you next week. All right. In the next live stream. So thank you so much, everybody. Take care. Keep asking questions. Keep raising your standards. And I will see you in next week's live stream. Until then, take care. Thank you so much. Bye.